A pulse of bass shook the floor beneath her heels. Madison Carter didn't flinch. She stood at the edge of the dance floor like she owned the night. Not because she needed attention, but because she'd trained herself to stay calm in rooms full of noise, money, and hungry eyes. She did that for a living. At 32, she was the kind of executive people tried to impress with fancy introductions and forced laughter. The kind of woman who never needed a +1 to look untouchable. The kind who could walk into a boardroom full of men twice her age and make them swallow their arrogance with a single sentence. Tonight, though, she wasn't in a boardroom. She was in a club in Manhattan where the lights ran blue and violet, where crystal chandeliers hung over a crowd that looked expensive, and where the air smelled like perfume, citrus, and heat. Her best friend had practically dragged her here. "Madison, you've been working like a machine for 6 months," Tessa Hall had said earlier, while applying lip gloss in Madison's penthouse bathroom. "You need to remember you're not a robot." "I'm not a robot," Madison had replied, buttoning a blazer she'd already decided she wouldn't keep on for long. Tessa had pointed at her face. "Your expression says otherwise." Now Tessa was somewhere in the crowd, dancing with 2 strangers and grinning like she was auditioning for a carefree life. Madison held her drink at chest level, scanning the room the way she scanned negotiations, quietly, sharply, without wasting energy. She wasn't here to flirt. She wasn't here to get messy. She was here because Tessa begged, and because Madison had finally admitted to herself that she was tired of going home to silence. She shifted her weight, feeling the rhythm in her bones without letting it show too much. Then she felt it. Not a touch. A presence. The kind that made the air feel heavier. Madison turned her head slightly, expecting to see some drunk guy leaning too close. Instead, she saw him. Tall, broad shoulders, black shirt open at the throat like rules didn't apply to him. Dark hair, trimmed but not styled in a pretty way. The kind of jawline that didn't ask permission. His face was calm, almost blank, but his eyes were not. His eyes were watching her like he already knew what she tasted like. Madison didn't move. Years of discipline kept her expression controlled, but something inside her tightened, alert and annoyed and curious. He stepped closer, no smile, no polite nod, just a straight line toward her as if the crowd would part out of respect. And it did. Madison's pulse kicked once, hard. She lifted her chin. "Can I help you?" His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth, then returned to her eyes. "You're standing alone," he said. It wasn't a question. Madison's brows lifted. "That's an observation." He stared at her like she was the first honest thing he'd seen all night. "What's your name?" he asked. Madison let out a small breath through her nose, amused in spite of herself. "Do you always skip introductions?" He didn't react. "No," he said. "Only when I don't want to waste time." Her stomach did something stupid, a small, quick flip, like her body had decided it was interested before her brain could veto it. "Then you're in luck," Madison said smoothly. "I don't waste time either." His eyes narrowed slightly, as if that pleased him. He didn't offer his name. He didn't offer his hand. He stepped closer until Madison could smell him. Clean, masculine, expensive, but not obnoxious. Like a man who didn't need to prove his wealth because he was the wealth. Madison's grip tightened on her glass. She should step back. She didn't. "I'm waiting," she said. "For what?" "For your next move," Madison replied, and immediately regretted it because it sounded like an invitation. His gaze dipped to her throat. "You're not afraid?" "I don't have a reason to be," she said. He leaned in just enough that his breath brushed her ear. "Not yet." Heat crawled up her neck. Madison hated it, not because it felt bad, because it made her feel reactive. She took a sip of her drink, buying herself a second. When she lowered the glass, his hand reached out, not to touch her, to take her wrist. 2 fingers, firm and precise, like he was testing her pulse. Madison's breath caught. It was a simple touch. It felt like a warning or a promise. Her eyes snapped to his. "Excuse me. I wanted to see if you'd pull away," he said. Madison's lips parted slightly. And? You didn't. The music surged, the crowd roared, and in the tiny space between them, the world narrowed to his hand on her wrist and the look on his face. Madison should have removed herself. She should have called Tessa. She should have done 100 responsible things. Instead, she said, "If you're trying to intimidate me, you're doing a terrible job." Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of amusement. "Good," he murmured, "because that's not what I'm trying to do." Before Madison could respond, he reached for her drink and gently pushed it down, away from her mouth, as if he was clearing space. And then he kissed her. No warm-up, no asking. Just his mouth on hers, deep and sure, like he'd decided, and the universe had agreed. Madison froze for a heartbeat. Not because she didn't want it, because her brain didn't know what to do with it. She hadn't been kissed like that in years. Not with that level of certainty. Not with that level of hunger held under control. His hand slid from her wrist to her waist, pulling her closer, and the club vanished. Madison's body answered before she did. Her fingers rose, grabbing his shirt, and she kissed him back. Hard, the taste of whiskey and mint, the heat of him. The shock of being wanted so openly in the middle of a crowd. Her mind screamed that this was reckless. Her pulse screamed that she didn't care. He broke the kiss slowly, his forehead nearly touching hers. Madison's lips tingled. Her lungs forgot their job for a second. He stared at her like he was memorizing her. Then he said, low, "There you are." Madison blinked, breathless. "There I am." "Asleep," he murmured. "Until now?" Madison let out a shaky laugh, more surprised by her own sound than anything. That was dramatic. He didn't smile, but his eyes stayed on her mouth. "You liked it," he said. Madison should have denied it out of principle. She didn't. She lifted her chin. "I didn't stop you." His gaze sharpened again. "What do you do?" Madison's brain tried to regain control. What do you do for work?" he repeated, as if he was suddenly curious about the part of her that wasn't just lips and heat. Madison swallowed. "I'm the COO of Carter & Vale." That name had weight in New York, real weight. His expression didn't change. No impressed reaction, no fake compliment. Only a slight pause, like he'd just learned something that mattered. "You're Madison Carter," he said. Madison narrowed her eyes. "Now you know who I am. Still not telling me who you are." He held her gaze. Then finally he said, "Enzo." Just Enzo. Madison almost laughed again. "That's it? Like a movie villain?" Enzo's gaze didn't soften. "Do you want my full name?" Madison hesitated. "Should I?" His hand slid to the back of her neck, thumb brushing the edge of her jaw. His touch was controlled, but it sent a spark through her skin. "You shouldn't want anything," he said quietly. "But you do." Madison's throat went dry. The honesty of that statement hit her harder than the kiss. She pulled in a slow breath. "Enzo," she repeated, testing it. His eyes held hers. "Madison." He said her name like he liked how it sounded. Madison's phone buzzed in her clutch. She ignored it. A second later, it buzzed again, then again. She didn't check it. She didn't want anything pulling her out of this moment. Enzo glanced down at her clutch, noticing the vibrations. "Someone worried about you?" "Probably Tessa," Madison said. "She's dramatic." Enzo's gaze moved past her, scanning the room. He went still. Madison noticed it instantly. "What?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened slightly. Then he said, "Stay here." Madison blinked. "Excuse me?" Enzo stepped away, moving through the crowd like a blade. Madison watched him go, annoyed at herself for feeling left. Who was he to kiss her like that and then just walk away? And why did she care? She turned, searching for Tessa, but the dance floor had swallowed everyone. Madison checked her phone. 5 missed messages from Tessa. One said, "Where are you?" Another, "I turned around and you disappeared." The third. Who is that man? Madison smirked despite herself. She typed, I'm fine, stop yelling. Before she could send it, someone bumped her shoulder. Sorry, a voice said. Madison turned, and her breath stopped again. Because it was him, not Enzo. But close enough that her brain did a double take. Same dark hair, same height, same build. But the face was different in the details. Lighter eyes, a half smile already on his mouth, and a look that wasn't cold. It was amused, like he'd walked into a scene and found it entertaining. Madison stared, confused. He stared right back, then looked her up and down without shame. Well, he said, you're real. Madison blinked. What? He leaned in slightly like he was sharing a secret. I was starting to think my brother was hallucinating. Madison's stomach dropped. My... what? He grinned. Brother. Madison's throat tightened. Enzo is your brother. That's right, he said, sounding pleased with himself. Madison crossed her arms, suddenly defensive. And you are? He offered his hand with an exaggerated politeness. Adrian Russo. Russo. Italian, of course. Madison didn't take his hand. Adrian didn't seem offended. He let his hand fall, still smiling. I saw you two, he said. Madison's cheeks heated. You were watching. I was observing, Adrian corrected with a playful shrug. There's a difference. Madison's eyes narrowed. Your brother kissed me. Adrian nodded, the smile still on his mouth. He tends to do what he wants. Madison scoffed softly. I noticed. Adrian leaned closer, lowering his voice so the music wouldn't swallow it. Did you like it? Madison's eyes flashed. That's not your business. Adrian's grin widened, like he enjoyed getting under her skin. You're right, he said. It's not. Then he tilted his head slightly, studying her face. But I'm curious, he added. Because he doesn't do that. Madison's heart kicked again. Do what? Lose control, Adrian said simply. Madison swallowed. She didn't like how that made her feel. Special. Or like she'd stepped into something she didn't understand. She lifted her chin. Where is your brother? Adrian's eyes shifted past her shoulder. He's coming. Madison turned. Enzo was moving back toward them, and even from a distance his expression had changed. His face was hard now. His eyes went straight to Adrian, then to Madison, then back to Adrian, like he didn't like what he saw. Madison's pulse accelerated for a different reason this time. Enzo reached them and stopped close enough that his presence pressed into her space again. He looked at Adrian. Move. Adrian laughed quietly. Relax. Enzo didn't relax. Adrian lifted both hands in mock surrender, still smiling. I'm just saying hello. Enzo's eyes narrowed. Say it from over there. Madison's gaze bounced between them. She wasn't used to men acting like this around her, competing, watching each other, acting like she was a prize. She hated it. And yet, a part of her couldn't deny the thrill in her chest. Adrian's eyes slid to Madison again. You didn't tell me your name. Madison gave him a cool look. I didn't ask for your brother's name either. Adrian laughed genuinely. Okay, I like you. Enzo's jaw tightened. Madison glanced at Enzo. Is your family always this intense? Enzo's gaze stayed on Adrian, but he answered her. Only when necessary. Adrian sighed dramatically. He's like this all the time. Enzo's eyes cut to Madison. Come with me. Madison's brows lifted. Why? Enzo's voice dropped lower. Because I asked. Madison let out a small laugh. That's not a reason. Adrian leaned in again, playful. He's not used to being told no. Madison turned her head toward Adrian. And you are? Adrian's smile widened. I'm very used to being told no. Enzo's hand found Madison's waist again, firm, possessive without being rough. Madison stiffened at the contact. Enzo noticed instantly and his grip loosened, adjusting like he was correcting himself. His voice softened slightly. I don't want you here alone. Madison studied his face. He wasn't flirting now. He looked protective. and that confused her more than anything. Madison's eyes flicked to Adrian. Am I in danger? Adrian's grin faded a fraction. He looked at Enzo, then back at her. In this club? Adrian said carefully. Not if you're with him. Madison's throat tightened. That answer wasn't reassuring. It was informative. She swallowed. What does that mean? Enzo stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Not tonight. Madison's pulse thudded. Not tonight? Enzo's gaze locked onto hers. Madison. The way he said her name made her feel pulled. Adrian, as if sensing the shift, stepped back with exaggerated patience. Okay, I'll go. Enzo didn't look away from Madison. Go. Adrian lifted a brow. You're acting like you own her. Madison's eyes snapped to Adrian, irritated. He doesn't. Enzo's gaze flickered at that, but he didn't argue. Adrian smirked, amused again. Good. Then I get to try too. Madison blinked. Try what? Adrian didn't answer. He stepped forward. And before Madison could fully process it, he leaned in and kissed her. Not like Enzo. Not deep and consuming. This was quick, confident, teasing. Like a dare delivered with lips. Madison froze for half a second out of sheer shock. Then it was over. Adrian stepped back, smiling like he'd just stolen a cookie. Enzo's expression went deadly quiet. The air between the brothers turned sharp. Madison's hand flew to her mouth, not because she was offended, but because her brain was scrambling to catch up. What the? Adrian held up both hands again. It's fine. It's just a kiss. Enzo's voice was low. You don't touch what isn't yours. Madison's eyes snapped to Enzo. Excuse me. Enzo's gaze shifted to her, and the intensity in his eyes made her forget how to breathe properly. His voice softened just enough to be dangerous. You're right. He paused. You're not anyone's, he said. But he doesn't get to treat you like a joke. Adrian's smile faded a little. I didn't. Enzo cut him off with a look. Madison's chest rose and fell, her pulse racing, her skin hot. She should be angry. She was angry. But she was also confused. Because part of her had liked Adrian's kiss too. And the fact that she liked it made her feel reckless in a way she'd never allowed herself. Madison took a step back, needing space, needing air. Both brothers watched her like the next move mattered. Madison lifted her chin. I'm not a prize you can argue over. Adrian's brows lifted in approval. Good. Enzo's gaze stayed steady. I know. Madison looked at Enzo. Then stop acting like you're in charge. Enzo held her gaze, jaw tight. I'm not. Adrian let out a laugh. He's lying. Enzo's eyes cut to Adrian again, warning. Madison exhaled sharply, turning away for a second, pressing her fingers to her forehead. This was ridiculous. She came out for one drink, one night of fun. And now she was being kissed by two brothers who looked like they belonged in a private war. Madison turned back, eyes sharp. Why did you kiss me? She looked at Enzo. Enzo's answer came without hesitation. Because I wanted to. She looked at Adrian. Adrian's smile returned slower. Because I wanted to see if you'd slap me. Madison blinked. What? Adrian shrugged. You didn't. Madison's mouth opened, then closed. She was not used to men being this bold, or this honest, or this dangerous in their confidence. Enzo stepped closer again, voice low. Come with me, somewhere quieter. Madison's eyes narrowed. To where? Enzo didn't answer immediately. His gaze moved over her face like he was memorizing her again. Then he said, outside. Adrian leaned in slightly, playful again. Or you could come with me instead. Madison's jaw tightened. Are you serious? Adrian grinned. Always. Enzo's expression hardened. Adrian. Adrian's gaze flicked to his brother. What? You kissed her first. It's not fair if you get all the fun. Madison's pulse jumped again, heat rising in her cheeks. She hated that she was blushing. She looked at both of them, then shook her head, a small laugh escaping because the absurdity hit her all at once. This is insane, she muttered. Adrian's smile softened, almost genuine. "Welcome to our family." Madison's laugh cut off, because that line landed differently. Family, Enzo, Adrian, and something behind their eyes that wasn't just flirting. Madison glanced past them, noticing two men in suits near the bar who weren't drinking, weren't dancing, just watching. Their posture screamed security. Their gaze stayed on Enzo like he was the center of gravity. Madison's stomach tightened. This wasn't just two attractive brothers having fun. This was a world with rules, and she'd just kissed the center of it. Madison's voice lowered. "Who are you?" Enzo's gaze held hers, steady. "Not someone you should meet in a place like this." Madison swallowed. "That doesn't answer me." Adrian leaned in again, voice softer now, less teasing. "You're smart, Madison. You already know." Madison's pulse thudded. She looked at Enzo. "Are you—" Enzo cut in. "Let's go." Madison's chin lifted. "I decide where I go." Enzo's eyes narrowed slightly, but his voice stayed controlled. "Then decide." The challenge in that made something spark in her. Madison took a slow breath. She didn't like being pressured, but she also didn't like being afraid. Madison looked at Adrian. "Are you always like this?" Adrian smiled. "Charming?" Madison's lips twitched. "Annoying?" Adrian laughed. "Yes." Madison looked at Enzo. "And you?" Enzo's gaze didn't move. "Honest." Madison's heart kicked again, because he had been honest, and that was what made him dangerous. Madison's phone buzzed again. She checked it. "Tessa, I'm coming to find you." "If you're dead, I'll kill you." Madison snorted softly. Adrian's brows lifted. "Friend?" Madison nodded. "Unfortunately." Adrian's smile widened. "I like her already." Enzo's gaze flicked to Madison's screen, then back to her. "Tell her you're leaving." Madison narrowed her eyes. "You really want me to leave with you?" Enzo didn't deny it. "Yes." Adrian tilted his head, studying her. "He wants to take you somewhere private." Madison's eyes snapped to Adrian. "That's not helping." Adrian's grin turned wicked. "It's helping me." Enzo's voice cut low. "Enough." Madison exhaled, feeling something she didn't want to name. Desire, curiosity, a hint of fear, and a thrill she hadn't felt since she was young enough to make stupid decisions and call them memories. Madison took a step back again, holding up a finger like she was addressing a meeting. "One," she said, looking at Enzo. "You don't order me." Enzo's jaw tightened. "Fine." "Two," she said, looking at Adrian. "You don't kiss me without warning again." Adrian's smile softened. "I can try." Madison's eyes narrowed. That wasn't a joke. Adrian raised both hands. "Okay, no more surprise kisses." Madison looked back at Enzo. "And three. If I go outside, it's because I want air, not because you want to hide me." Enzo's gaze held hers, and for the first time, the hardness in his face eased just a fraction. "Good," he said quietly. "I don't want to hide you." That line hit Madison in the chest, because it sounded like something else, like a promise, like a confession. Madison swallowed, then turned, walking toward the exit. Both brothers followed. Of course they did. And as Madison pushed through the velvet rope and stepped into the quieter hallway leading to the doors, she felt the shift. The bass dulled behind her. The air cooled. The chaos became distant. But the tension stayed. If anything, it got stronger. Madison glanced over her shoulder. Enzo walked on her left, silent, watchful. Adrian walked on her right, smiling like this was fun. Madison muttered, "I can't believe this is happening." Adrian leaned in, voice light. "Neither can he." Enzo didn't answer, but Madison could feel his gaze on her like a weight. They reached the doors. The doorman recognized Enzo instantly, opening them without hesitation. Madison noticed. That detail mattered. Outside, the city hit her like a cold splash. December air, taxi horns, streetlights reflecting on wet pavement, the club's neon sign buzzing above them. Madison took a breath, the cold clearing her head. She turned to face them both. "Okay," she said, voice steady. "Now explain." Enzo's gaze locked onto hers. Adrian's smile faded slightly, waiting. Madison's eyes sharpened. "Who are you, really?" Enzo took a step closer, close enough that she felt his warmth against the cold air. He didn't touch her, but his presence did. His voice came low and direct. "Enzo Russo," he said. "And if you keep standing next to us in public, Madison Carter, you're going to become a story everyone wants to tell." Madison's pulse slammed. Adrian let out a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it this time. Madison's throat went dry. "A story." Enzo's eyes stayed on hers. "A target." The word hung in the cold air. Madison didn't move, didn't blink. Her heart hammered like it wanted to escape. Then she lifted her chin anyway, because fear had never been her thing. And she wasn't about to start now. Madison's voice was calm, controlled. "Then maybe you should have thought about that," she said, "before you kissed me." Enzo's stare held hers, and for a moment, the city seemed to go quiet around them. Adrian's voice cut in, softer now, more serious. "He did think about it." Madison glanced at Adrian. Adrian's eyes were on her, steady. "That's the problem." Madison's breath caught, because suddenly it wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't just flirting. It was something else, something bigger, something that could ruin her carefully built life, or set it on fire. Enzo's voice dropped again. "Get in the car." Madison's eyes flashed. "There you go, ordering me again." Enzo leaned in, mouth near her ear, his tone controlled but urgent. "This isn't about pride." Madison's pulse raced. Adrian stepped closer too, watching the street. Madison noticed then, across the road, a black SUV had slowed. Not a taxi, not random. It slowed like it was watching. Enzo's hand finally touched her, gentle this time at her elbow, guiding, not claiming. Madison didn't like being guided, but she liked being alive. She swallowed hard, then moved with them toward the waiting car at the curb. As she stepped closer, she saw the driver already had the back door open. Madison looked at Enzo one last time, voice tight. "If I get in this car, my life changes." Enzo's gaze didn't soften, but it turned honest in a way that made her chest ache. "Yes," he said. "It does." Adrian's voice came lower, almost gentle. "But you won't be bored anymore." Madison let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a warning at the same time. Then she got in, and the door closed behind her like the end of one world and the beginning of another. Madison's heart was still racing when the car began to move. The interior smelled like leather and something clean, subtle, expensive. The windows were dark enough that the city became blurred light instead of detail. For the first time in a long time, Madison felt a dangerous thing: uncertainty. She sat upright, knees together, clutch on her lap. Her face stayed calm because she'd practiced calm like a language. Across from her, Enzo Russo sat with his back against the seat, one arm resting casually, like this was nothing. Like he hadn't just kissed her in the middle of a club and pulled her into a car like a storm pulling a boat out to sea. Beside him, Adrian sat turned slightly toward her, posture relaxed, eyes bright with that same "I enjoy trouble" energy. Madison glanced from one brother to the other. "So, this is what you do? Pick women up outside clubs and announce their targets?" Adrian's mouth twitched. "It's not our usual Tuesday." Enzo didn't laugh. His gaze stayed on Madison, steady. "You should have left when you felt something was off." Madison leaned back slightly, offended. "I did leave. With you." Enzo's jaw tightened a fraction. "Because you didn't want to feel afraid." Madison blinked. That landed too accurately. Adrian leaned in a little. "He's annoyingly observant." Madison's eyes narrowed. "And you're annoyingly loud." Adrian smiled, like that was a compliment. "Thank you." Enzo's eyes cut to his brother. "Stop." Adrian held both hands up. I'm stopping. I'm stopping. Madison exhaled sharply, then looked out the window. Neon spilled across the glass. Somewhere outside, Manhattan kept breathing like nothing had changed, like her life hadn't just shifted onto a different track. She turned back. Where are we going? Enzo answered simply. Somewhere safe. Madison let out a short laugh. That's vague. It's honest, Enzo said. Madison's tone sharpened. I'm not a child. Safe doesn't tell me anything. Adrian leaned closer, voice quieter than before. It's a private lounge. No cameras. Controlled entrance. People who don't talk. Madison looked at him. How reassuring. Adrian shrugged. You'd be surprised how valuable silence is in this city. Enzo's gaze stayed on Madison. You can ask me anything you want. Madison studied his face. Okay. She took a breath, then went straight for it. What do you do? Enzo didn't hesitate. I run things. Madison stared. That's still vague. Adrian laughed under his breath. It's his favorite answer. Enzo's eyes flicked to Adrian. I'm not playing. Adrian's smile faded slightly, but he still looked amused. Neither is she. Madison leaned forward a little, voice low and controlled. I'm not asking because I'm curious. I'm asking because you dragged me into a car and said I could be a target. That's not flirting. Enzo's expression tightened. For a moment he looked like he was deciding how much truth to give. Then he said, My family has enemies. Madison's eyebrows lifted. That's not exactly rare. Enzo's gaze didn't move. Our enemies don't argue on social media. Adrian's voice softened. They don't send emails. Madison's stomach tightened. She looked at Adrian. Your last name is Russo. That's Italian. Adrian nodded. Yeah. Madison looked at Enzo. And your first name is Enzo. That's not exactly blending in. Enzo's mouth twitched slightly, almost an expression. Almost. I don't need to blend in, he said. Madison stared at him, then shook her head. That must be nice. Adrian's smile returned. It is. Madison ignored him and focused on Enzo. So what, you're some kind of... Enzo cut in gently but firmly. Don't say it out loud. Madison paused. Adrian leaned in, playful but careful. He means don't make it real by naming it. Madison's jaw tightened. It's already real. Enzo's gaze softened, just a fraction. Not to you. Not yet. Madison sat back, her pulse still high, but her mind sharpening. She hated being in the dark. She hated feeling like someone else held the information. Then take me back, she said. Enzo didn't react immediately. Adrian blinked, surprised. Wow, okay. Madison looked at Enzo, unwavering. Take me back. I can go home. I can lock my door. I can go back to my life. Enzo's voice stayed calm. You could. Madison waited. Enzo continued. But you won't. Madison's chest tightened. And why is that? Enzo leaned forward slightly, his eyes pinning hers. Because you didn't look scared when I said target. Madison swallowed. Enzo's voice lowered. You looked angry. Adrian let out a low whistle. He's right. Madison's cheeks warmed, irritation and something else mixed together. She turned her head toward the window again, pretending the city was more interesting than the two men pulling her apart from the inside. The car slowed, then turned. Madison felt the shift under her body. They were leaving the brighter streets and moving into quieter ones. She recognized the area, private buildings, discreet entrances, doormen who didn't stare. A car that belonged here. The driver pulled up under a covered entrance. Madison's eyes narrowed as she saw two men in suits waiting. Not doormen. Not exactly. Security. The door opened from the outside and cold air rushed in. Enzo stepped out first, then turned back, offering his hand. Madison looked at his hand like it was a challenge. Adrian leaned across, smirking. Careful, Madison. If you touch him, he'll probably think you're in love. Madison shot him a glare. If I touch him, it's because I don't want to trip in heels. Adrian's grin widened. Sure. Madison took Enzo's hand. His grip was warm, firm, steady, not squeezing. not controlling, just there. And somehow, that made her chest tighten more than it should. She stepped out of the car and straightened her coat. The cold hit her cheeks, clearing her head again. The building looked like wealth without flash, stone, glass, dim gold lighting. Inside, the lobby was quiet, too quiet. No one spoke as they walked in. The security men nodded at Enzo. Not friendly, respectful, like he didn't need permission. Madison's heels clicked on marble as they moved toward a private elevator. Adrian walked beside her, hands in his pockets, looking completely at ease. "So," he murmured. "Shuo of Carter and Vale, you always this bossy?" Madison didn't look at him. "I'm not bossy, I'm competent." Adrian chuckled. "Even better." Enzo pressed a button. The elevator doors opened instantly, like they'd been waiting. Madison stepped inside, and as the doors closed, she felt the private pressure of being boxed in with them again. Enzo stood slightly in front of her, shield-like without being obvious. Adrian leaned back against the wall, watching her like he was enjoying every second of her irritation. The elevator rose in silence. Madison broke it. "You said you'd answer anything." Enzo's gaze met hers. "Yes." Madison's voice stayed steady. "Why did you kiss me?" Enzo didn't hesitate. "Because you looked like you never let anyone take what they wanted from you." Madison blinked. Adrian's eyebrows lifted. "Okay, that was poetic. Are you feeling okay, brother?" Enzo ignored him. Madison's throat tightened. "And you thought you'd try." Enzo's voice dropped. "I didn't try." Heat crawled up Madison's neck. She hated how her body responded to him, how the simplest line could make her pulse jump. Adrian cleared his throat loudly. "And I kissed you because—" Enzo's eyes cut to him like a blade. "Don't." Adrian grinned. "Too late. I'm already talking." Madison looked at Adrian, annoyed. "Why did you kiss me?" Adrian's smile softened slightly, becoming less teasing and more honest. "Because you looked like you could handle it." Madison stared. "That's your reason?" Adrian shrugged. "It's a compliment." Madison's lips pressed together. "I don't take compliments that come with no consent." Adrian's smile faded fully for a moment. He lifted both hands, palms out, genuine now. "You're right, that was out of line." Enzo's gaze stayed on Adrian, hard. Adrian added quickly, "I won't do it again." Madison studied him. She could tell when a man was pretending to be charming to cover something ugly. Adrian wasn't ugly. He was reckless. There was a difference. The elevator chimed softly. The doors opened to a private hallway with warm lighting and thick carpet that swallowed sound. Enzo led them toward a door that required a code. He entered it without looking. The door opened, and Madison stepped into a space that looked like a penthouse lounge. Dim, elegant, quiet. A bar with bottles lined like jewels. A fireplace, a low couch, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city like it was a painting. Madison stopped near the entrance, scanning the room. "This is yours?" Enzo shrugged slightly. "One of mine." Adrian walked straight to the bar. "Drink?" Madison's first instinct was no, but her body still felt charged, and her mind wanted something to hold. "Water," she said. Adrian made a face. "You're no fun." Madison's eyes flashed. "I'm plenty of fun, I'm just not stupid." Adrian's grin returned as he poured water into a glass. "That's the hottest thing you've said tonight." Madison ignored him. Enzo walked to the window and glanced down, scanning the street like he was checking something. Then he turned back to Madison. "Sit," he said. Madison's eyes narrowed. "Ask." Enzo paused, then corrected himself. "Please." Madison blinked at the word. It sounded unnatural coming from him. Adrian leaned on the bar, watching like he was witnessing a rare event. "Wow," he said, "please. Mark the calendar." Enzo didn't look at him, but his jaw tightened again. Madison walked to the couch and sat, not because she was obeying, but because her legs actually needed the break. Adrian handed her the water. Their fingers brushed lightly, and Madison noticed how warm his hand was, too. She hated that she noticed. Enzo remained standing, looking down at her. "You're safe here." Madison took a sip. "I'm still waiting for an explanation." Enzo nodded slowly. "Fine." He sat on the chair across from her, posture controlled, elbows resting on his knees. Adrian sat on the arm of the couch like he belonged there, too close, too casual. Madison looked at both of them. "Start from the beginning." Enzo's gaze held hers. "There is no beginning. There's just what we are." Madison's tone sharpened. "That's not an answer." Adrian sighed, then pointed a finger at Enzo. "He's allergic to details." Enzo's eyes cut to him. "I'm not." Adrian raised both brows. "Then talk." Enzo exhaled slowly, like he was choosing words carefully. "My family controls certain industries." Madison tilted her head. "That's still vague." Enzo's voice stayed calm. "It has to be." Madison's lips pressed together. "Why?" Adrian answered, this time softer. "Because if you can repeat it, someone else can hear it." Madison's stomach tightened again. Enzo continued, "There are people who would use you to get to me." Madison's voice lowered. "So you kissed me and pulled me into your orbit anyway." Enzo's gaze didn't move. "Yes." Madison stared at him, incredulous. "That's selfish." Adrian let out a quiet laugh. "That's him." Enzo's jaw tightened. "It's honest." Madison's eyes stayed locked on Enzo. "Do you do honest, selfish things often?" Enzo's gaze softened a fraction, just enough to be dangerous. "Not with women like you." Madison's breath caught. Adrian tilted his head. "Women like her?" Enzo didn't look away from Madison. Smart, unimpressed, not hunting for status. Adrian's expression shifted, slightly less playful. "And what if she is?" Madison's eyes snapped to Adrian. "I'm not." Adrian's smile returned quickly. "Relax, I'm teasing." Madison's tone stayed sharp. "Then stop teasing, I'm not in the mood." Adrian held up his hands. "Okay, not teasing." Enzo watched the exchange like he was filing it away. Madison exhaled and forced herself to stay calm. "So what happens now?" Enzo's answer came low. "Now you choose." Madison blinked. "Choose what?" Enzo's eyes held hers. "You can leave. Tonight. I'll have someone take you home and make sure you're safe." Madison waited. Enzo continued, "Or you can stay here for an hour, talk, and decide whether you want to see me again." Madison's chest tightened. "And what about your brother?" Adrian's grin flickered back. "Oh, I'm definitely part of the conversation." Enzo's gaze cut to Adrian. "No." Adrian's smile became sharp. "Yes." Madison looked between them, tension rising again. "Are you two always like this?" Adrian shrugged. "He acts like he's the only one with feelings." Enzo's eyes narrowed. "Stop." Adrian leaned forward, voice softer again, aimed at Madison. "He didn't expect you. That's why he's acting like a wall, but he's not the only one who noticed you." Madison's throat tightened. Enzo's voice dropped. "Adrian." Adrian held his brother's gaze. "What? It's true?" Madison's heart beat hard. She didn't like being pulled. She didn't like being the rope in a tug of war. She set the water down and stood. Both brothers went still. Madison smoothed her coat, her voice firm. "Here's what's going to happen." Adrian smiled. "I love when you do that." Madison shot him a look that could cut glass. "I'm going to call my friend, tell her I'm alive. Then I'm going to go home." Enzo's face didn't change, but his gaze sharpened. "And after that?" Madison inhaled slowly. "After that, if I decide I want this." She glanced at both of them. "It will be on my terms. Not yours, not your brother's. Mine." Adrian's grin widened, impressed. "Perfect." Enzo stared at her for a long beat. Then he nodded once. "Good." Madison blinked. "That's it?" Enzo stood, stepping closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." Her pulse jumped again, annoyed at her own reaction. Madison reached into her clutch and called Tessa. It rang once, twice. Then Tessa answered with a scream. "Where are you?" Madison winced. "Lower your voice." Tessa's voice was furious and relieved at the same time. "I thought you were dead." "I'm not dead," Madison said. "I'm fine." "Fine?" Tessa hissed. "You disappeared with a man who looks like he could break someone's neck for fun." Madison glanced at Enzo's face and had to fight the urge to smile. "He's not breaking anyone's neck." Tessa made a sound of disbelief. "Where are you?" Madison hesitated. Enzo's gaze held hers, steady. Madison lowered her voice. "I'm somewhere safe. I'm going home now." Tessa exhaled loudly. "Send me your location." Madison frowned. "Why?" "Because I'm your friend and I like knowing you're not being kidnapped." Tessa snapped. Madison sighed. "I'll text you when I'm in my building." Tessa paused. "Are you alone?" Madison glanced at Adrian, who was smiling like he could hear every word, and Enzo, who looked calm but watchful. "No," Madison admitted. "I'm not." Tessa's voice lowered, serious now. "Madison, are you okay?" Madison's throat tightened at the genuine worry. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm okay." Tessa exhaled again. "Okay, but if you don't text me in 30 minutes, I'm calling the police, the FBI, and Beyoncé." Madison snorted. "Okay." She ended the call and looked at the brothers. Adrian clapped once, quiet. "I like her." Madison rolled her eyes. "Everyone likes her. She's a menace." Enzo stepped closer again, voice low. "I'll have someone take you home." Madison nodded, then paused. "You said I could ask anything." Enzo's gaze held hers. "Yes." Madison's voice lowered, more careful. "Are you dangerous?" Adrian's smile faded slightly, watching. Enzo didn't answer right away. Then he said, "To the wrong people." Madison swallowed. "And to me?" Enzo's gaze softened just a fraction again. "No." Adrian leaned in, eyes bright. "He's lying a little." Enzo's eyes cut to him. "Adrian." Adrian shrugged. "Not dangerous like that, but addictive?" "Absolutely." Madison's cheeks warmed. "I don't do addictive." Adrian's grin turned wicked. "Everyone says that." Enzo's voice went quieter, aimed at Madison alone. "If you see me again, it will complicate your life." Madison held his gaze. "And if I don't?" Enzo's jaw tightened. "Then I won't bother you." Adrian made a sound of protest. "Speak for yourself." Madison looked at Adrian. "You're not going to bother me either." Adrian placed a hand over his heart, offended. "So cold." Madison didn't smile, but her eyes softened a fraction. "I'm practical." Adrian leaned closer, voice playful again. "Practical women are the most dangerous." Enzo's gaze stayed on Madison. "He's right." Madison blinked, then looked away quickly, annoyed at how both of them could pull reactions out of her so easily. Enzo gestured toward the door. "Come." Madison lifted a brow. "Ask." Enzo exhaled once, clearly irritated at himself. "Come with me, please." Adrian grinned. Again, twice in one night. Madison couldn't stop the small laugh that escaped. It was quiet, surprised, real. Enzo's eyes flickered at that laugh like he'd won something. Madison followed Enzo toward the elevator. Adrian trailed behind, still smiling. As they stepped into the elevator, Madison glanced at the brothers again, one quiet and intense, the other playful and sharp, and she realized something that made her stomach tighten. This wasn't going to end with one night. Because now that she'd seen them, now that she'd felt what it was like to be looked at like that, going back to normal would feel like going back to sleep. The elevator doors opened downstairs. The driver was waiting. Madison stopped near the entrance, pulling her coat tighter, and looked at Enzo. "Enzo," she said. His gaze held hers. "Madison." Madison's voice was steady, but her pulse wasn't. "If I see you again, I'm not going to be someone you protect by keeping secrets. Enzo nodded once. I know. Adrian leaned in, smiling. And if you see me again, I'll warn you before I kiss you. Madison shot him a look. You won't kiss me. Adrian's grin widened. We'll see. Madison turned to Enzo again. Good night. Enzo didn't reach for her, didn't pull her in. He only said low, good night. Madison stepped into the car. As the door closed, she looked through the tinted glass and saw them both standing there. Enzo still like a statue, Adrian still smiling, and she felt the strangest mix of emotions rise in her chest. Fear, excitement, desire, and a curiosity that felt like trouble. The car pulled away, leaving the building behind, leaving them behind. But the kisses didn't leave her, and the fact that she wasn't sure which one she was thinking about more, that was the part that scared her the most. Madison didn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling while Manhattan hummed outside her windows, her mind replaying two mouths, two voices, two kinds of heat. Enzo's kiss had been a claim he didn't admit to making. Adrian's had been a dare delivered with a grin, and the worst part was that neither one felt forgettable. At 6:12 a.m., she gave up, showered, dressed, and turned herself back into the woman who didn't get shaken. By 8, she was in her office at Carter & Vale. Glass walls, clean lines, and a calendar packed so tightly it didn't leave room for mistakes, or for Mafia brothers. Tessa called the second Madison sat down. You're alive, Tessa said, voice dramatic and still half angry. Madison pinched the bridge of her nose. Yes. Madison. Who were they? Madison's jaw tightened. Don't start. I'm starting, Tessa insisted. Because you vanished. Then you show up this morning with eyes like you just kissed trouble. Madison stared at the city through her window. It was one night. Tessa snorted. No, it was a chapter. Madison hung up before she could answer, because her assistant walked in with a tablet and a look that said something had already gone wrong. Madison, her assistant said carefully, there's a man in conference room B asking for you. Madison frowned. Did he schedule? No, her assistant whispered. But he's very calm about it. Madison stood. Calm wasn't reassuring anymore. She walked down the hall, heels sharp on the floor, and pushed open the conference room door, and stopped. Adrian Russo looked completely out of place in a corporate room, like a wolf lounging in a library. He was sitting at the table with a coffee cup he definitely hadn't paid for, one arm draped over the chair, smiling like he owned the building. Madison stared. How did you get past reception? Adrian lifted the cup. Charm. Madison crossed her arms. Or money. Adrian's grin widened. Also yes. Madison's voice dropped. Leave. Adrian didn't move. You didn't text your friend when you got home. Madison blinked. Excuse me. He leaned forward slightly, that teasing ease still there, but his eyes were sharper. I heard you promise her. 30 minutes. Madison's cheeks heated. I did text her. 2 hours later, Adrian corrected, still smiling. Madison narrowed her eyes. Are you stalking me? Adrian held up a hand. No, I'm checking. Checking on what? On you, he said simply. Then softer. Because Enzo didn't sleep either. Madison's chest tightened. She hated that she cared. That's not my problem. Adrian's smile faded just a little. It became your problem the second you got in that car. Madison swallowed. Why are you here? Adrian's grin returned like a mask sliding back on. Because you're hard to ignore. Madison stepped closer, voice cold. This is my workplace. You don't get to show up here and... The door opened again. Madison turned. Enzo walked in like he'd built the building himself. Black coat, dark shirt, calm face, eyes locked on Madison first, then on Adrian. The temperature in the room dropped. Madison's pulse spiked. You too? Enzo's gaze stayed on her. You didn't answer my message. Madison blinked. You messaged me. Enzo pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward her. A single text from an unknown number. Are you home? Madison stared at it, then looked up. I didn't know it was you. Adrian laughed quietly, She ignored you. That's adorable. Enzo's eyes cut to him. Get out. Adrian's smile sharpened. No. Madison lifted a hand. Enough. Both of you. Both brothers went still, like her voice actually mattered. Madison exhaled, forcing control back into her body. You can't come into my office like this. Do you understand what kind of attention this brings? Enzo's gaze softened a fraction. That's why we came. Madison's stomach tightened. Why? Enzo stepped closer, stopping a respectful distance away. Because someone noticed you last night. Madison's throat went dry. Who? Adrian's voice turned quiet, the humor drained. A man who shouldn't have been watching you. Madison's pulse hammered. So it's real. Enzo nodded once. Yes. Madison forced herself not to panic. Then what do you want from me? Enzo's eyes held hers. For the next few days, you don't go anywhere alone. Madison's jaw tightened. No. Adrian leaned in. Madison. She snapped her gaze to him. Don't Madison me. I built my life alone. I'm not about to. Enzo's voice cut low, controlled. This isn't about pride. Madison's breath hitched. The same words from the night before, except now they didn't feel like persuasion. They felt like a warning. She looked from Enzo to Adrian, then back. So what, you're going to put bodyguards on me? Enzo didn't blink. If you make me. Madison laughed once, sharp. You don't make me do anything. Adrian's mouth twitched, like he admired her even now. That's the problem. You make us crazy. Enzo's gaze snapped to Adrian, then back to Madison. And for the first time, Madison saw it. Something raw behind the control. Not just desire, attachment. And that should have scared her more than any target ever could. Madison swallowed hard. I'll be careful, she said, voice lower. But I'm not moving through my life like I'm owned. Enzo's expression eased slightly. Good. Adrian leaned back, smirking. Look at that. Negotiation. Madison shot him a look. You're not helping. Adrian's grin softened. I'm trying. Enzo stepped closer, voice quiet enough that it felt like it belonged only to her. We'll do this your way, but you listen when we say something matters. Madison held his gaze, her heart betraying her with every beat. Fine, she said. Adrian clapped softly once. See, she can compromise. Madison turned to him. And you can leave. Adrian stood, still smiling, but his eyes stayed serious for a moment. I will. But Madison? She didn't answer. Adrian's voice softened. Don't underestimate what you woke up in him. Madison's throat tightened. Adrian walked out. Silence filled the room. Enzo stayed. Madison tried to breathe like she wasn't affected. You shouldn't be here. Enzo's gaze lingered on her face. I know. Then why did you come? Enzo's voice was low, honest. To see you. Madison's pulse kicked hard. Enzo's eyes dropped to her mouth, then back up. And to tell you this. If you want me gone, I'll go. Madison swallowed, fighting the truth in her chest. Because she didn't want him gone. Not really. She lifted her chin, voice steady even as her body burned. Then don't go. Enzo's eyes darkened. He didn't touch her. But the way he looked at her felt like another kiss waiting to happen. And Madison realized, with a tight, dangerous thrill, this wasn't just a triangle. This was a fire. And she'd just agreed to stand close enough to feel it. Madison learned quickly that being careful didn't mean being distant. For the next few days, Enzo stayed present without hovering. Messages that asked if she'd eaten, short calls that ended with, call me when you're home, a black sedan that appeared where it needed to be without announcing itself. He didn't invade her life. He adjusted to it, and that unsettled her more than control ever could. Adrian, on the other hand, did not adjust. He appeared where he wasn't expected. Outside her building one morning, leaning against a car with a coffee in hand like it was coincidence. You're early, Madison said, stopping short. Adrian grinned. So are you. She crossed her arms. You can't keep doing this. I know, he said easily. That's why I enjoy it. Madison shook her head, trying not to smile. You're impossible. Yes, Adrian replied, but honest. That word again. Honesty, from men who lived in shadows. They walked a block together, public, visible, safe. Adrian didn't touch her, didn't push. He talked about food, about how bad Enzo was at relaxing, about how Madison looked like someone who never lost arguments. You don't know that, she said. Adrian glanced sideways at her. I know enough. The trouble wasn't that Adrian flirted, it was that he listened. Later that night, Enzo showed up unannounced. Not dramatic, not demanding. He stood in her doorway like a question he didn't want to ask. Madison stared. You don't knock? Enzo's mouth twitched. I did. She hadn't heard it. That bothered her. She stepped aside, letting him in. The space felt smaller instantly, charged. Enzo took in the room with one glance, cataloging exits, windows, threats, then focused fully on her. You went for coffee with him, he said. Madison's jaw tightened. I didn't hide it. Enzo nodded once. I know. Silence stretched. Madison folded her arms. Are you angry? No, Enzo said. Then after a beat, I don't like it. Her pulse jumped. Those aren't the same thing. They feel the same, he replied. Madison studied him. You don't get to claim territory. Enzo's gaze darkened, not possessive but raw. I'm not claiming you. Then what is this? She asked. He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. It's me realizing I don't want to pretend I don't care. That honesty landed harder than any demand. Madison's breath caught. You don't do halfway, do you? No, Enzo said quietly. Do you? She didn't answer, because the truth was forming in her chest, unwelcome and undeniable. She wanted them both, not equally, but differently. With Enzo, everything felt deep, intense, grounding, like stepping into a storm and trusting it wouldn't break her. With Adrian, everything felt light, electric, teasing, like laughter on the edge of a cliff. And she was standing between them, pretending she could keep balance forever. The next evening, they all ended up in the same place. A private charity event. Controlled, elegant, public enough to be safe. Madison arrived alone. Enzo watched from across the room, calm and composed, eyes tracking her with quiet heat. Adrian appeared at her side minutes later, offering his arm with a grin. May I? Madison hesitated, then took it. She felt Enzo's gaze sharpen. Good. If she was going to feel torn, she wouldn't hide it. Adrian leaned close, voice low. You're doing this on purpose. Madison smiled without looking at him. No, I'm just done apologizing for existing. Adrian laughed softly. Dangerous woman. Across the room, Enzo set his glass down and walked toward them. The air changed. People felt it without knowing why. Enzo stopped in front of them, gaze steady on Madison. You look beautiful. Madison's chest tightened. Thank you. Adrian added, amused. She does. Enzo didn't look at him. Madison broke the tension. I'm not a decision you get to force. Enzo's voice stayed calm. I know. Adrian tilted his head. Then what happens now? Madison looked at both of them. Two different kinds of pull. Two truths she couldn't deny. Now, she said slowly, we stop pretending this isn't complicated. Enzo nodded once. Adrian smiled, softer this time. Finally. The night moved on, but something had shifted. No lines were crossed, but the ground beneath them cracked just enough to let the truth through. And Madison knew, deep down, steady and certain, whatever choice she made, it would change all three of them. Madison didn't make a decision that night. That, in itself, was a decision. She left the charity event alone, her spine straight, her expression composed, the same way she left boardrooms after difficult negotiations. No one stopped her. No one followed her into the car. But she felt them anyway. Enzo's presence lingered like gravity, heavy, quiet, impossible to ignore. Adrian stayed lighter, like a hum under her skin that refused to fade. When she got home, she kicked off her heels, loosened her hair, and stood in front of the window for a long time, watching the city breathe. She had built her life on control, on clarity, on choosing the path that made the most sense. And yet, for the first time in years, sense wasn't enough. The following morning, she sent a message. Not to Enzo, not to Adrian, to both. I need space. A few days. Don't come to my office. Don't show up where I am. If this is real, you'll respect that. She stared at the screen after sending it, heart pounding like she'd just signed something irreversible. The reply from Enzo came first. Okay. One word, no pressure, no protest. That somehow hurt more than resistance. Adrian replied 2 minutes later. I hate this, but I hear you. Don't disappear completely. She didn't answer either. Instead, Madison threw herself into work. Long days, late meetings, strategy calls that demanded focus and rewarded discipline. She reminded herself who she was when desire wasn't involved. Sharp, capable, respected. But desire doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. At night, her thoughts betrayed her. Enzo standing too close without touching. Adrian's smile when he knew he was pushing boundaries. The way both of them looked at her like she mattered in different, dangerous ways. By the third night, exhaustion won. Madison fell asleep on her couch, laptop still open, mind half aware. Her phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. She ignored it. It buzzed again, then again. Annoyed, she grabbed it, ready to snap at Tessa, but froze. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then Enzo's voice, low and controlled. I know you asked for space. Madison sat up, instantly awake. Then why are you calling? Because something happened, he said, and I won't forgive myself if I don't tell you. Her pulse quickened. Tell me what? There was movement tonight, Enzo continued. Questions asked about you. Madison's stomach dropped. I thought you said... I said I'd respect your space, he interrupted gently. I didn't say I'd stop watching. She exhaled sharply, fear mixing with irritation. Are you saying I'm not safe? I'm saying you matter, Enzo replied. And that puts you on someone's radar. Madison stood, pacing now. Then what do you want me to do? Nothing different, he said. Just don't be alone tonight. She stopped walking. Enzo, I won't come, he added quickly. I promise. Adrian's with me. I just needed you to know. Madison closed her eyes, torn between gratitude and frustration. You broke the rule. I know, Enzo said. I'm sorry. The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. Thank you for telling me, she said quietly. The line went dead. She didn't sleep after that. The next day, she canceled 2 meetings and left the office early. Not out of fear, but because clarity was impossible when she was exhausted. She went home, changed into comfortable clothes, and made tea she barely drank. At 6:40 p.m., there was a knock at her door. Madison froze. She checked the security monitor. Adrian, alone. She stared at the screen for a long second, then opened the door halfway. You said space, she said flatly. Adrian held up both hands. I know, I broke the rule. She narrowed her eyes. You're competing now? No, he replied, surprisingly serious. I'm worried. That stopped her. She opened the door fully. 5 minutes. Adrian stepped inside, looking around like he was memorizing the space, not for threats, but for her. You shouldn't be here, Madison said. I know, Adrian replied. But Enzo didn't tell you everything. Her chest tightened. What didn't he tell me? Adrian hesitated, then spoke carefully. Someone isn't just asking questions. They're testing reactions. Madison's throat went dry. Testing who? You, he said. Through us. She stared at him. So I'm leverage. Adrian shook his head. You're not leverage. You're the complication. Madison let out a sharp laugh. That's comforting. Adrian stepped closer, voice lower. Madison, I joke because it's how I breathe. But this isn't funny. She studied his face. For once there was no grin, no teasing, just honesty. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because if you walk away completely," Adrian said, "Enzo will let you. He'll suffer quietly and call it respect." Madison's chest ached. "And you?" "I won't," Adrian admitted. "I'll chase you until you slam the door in my face." She swallowed. "That's not a virtue." "No," he agreed softly. "But it's the truth." Silence stretched between them. Madison finally spoke. "You're brothers." Adrian nodded. "Unfortunately. And you're both pulling me in opposite directions." Adrian's gaze softened. "Not opposite. Different." Madison looked away. "I can't be the thing that breaks you." Adrian stepped back, giving her space. "You won't. We were cracked long before you." That line stayed with her. "Leave," she said quietly. Adrian didn't argue. He walked to the door, paused, then turned back. "One more thing." She waited. "When this ends," he said, "I hope you choose the one who makes you feel safe." Madison's voice was barely audible. "And what if that's not the same one who makes me feel alive?" Adrian smiled sadly. "That's the real problem, isn't it?" He left. Madison locked the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She thought. For the first time since that night at the club, she admitted something she'd been avoiding. This wasn't about choosing a man. It was about choosing a life. The following day, she made another decision. She texted Enzo, "I want to see you. Alone. Tonight." The reply came almost immediately. "Where?" She sent an address. Her apartment. At 9 p.m., Enzo arrived. No entourage, no drama, just him. Madison opened the door and didn't step back. They stood facing each other in silence, the air thick with everything unsaid. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know," Enzo replied. "But you asked." She nodded once. "I need honesty, not protection, not half-truths." Enzo's gaze held hers. "Then ask." Madison's voice trembled just slightly. "If I walk away right now, completely, will you let me?" Enzo didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Yes." The word hit her like a bruise. "And if I stay?" she whispered. Enzo stepped closer, stopping inches away. "Then I'll fight every instinct I have not to ruin your life." Madison closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. She reached for his hand. He froze at the contact, then slowly, carefully, closed his fingers around hers. "Enzo," she said softly, "I don't want to be kept safe from the truth." His voice was low. "Then don't." She met his gaze, steady now. "I'm not choosing tonight." He nodded once. "Okay." But the way he held her hand told her something else. This space she'd asked for, it had changed everything. And the next choice she made wouldn't just hurt. It would decide who walked forward with her, and who she'd have to leave behind. Madison woke before dawn with Enzo's presence still lingering in the apartment. Not physically, he had left before midnight, respectful of the line she'd drawn, but emotionally, he was everywhere. In the quiet of early morning, the truth she'd been circling finally took shape. She couldn't keep standing in the middle, not without breaking something that mattered. She showered, dressed, and went to work with a calm that felt earned, not forced. By noon, she'd cleared her schedule for the evening and sent 2 messages to Enzo. "I'm ready to talk. Tonight. Neutral ground." His reply came seconds later. "Name the place." To Adrian, "I need to see you too. Tonight, same place. We need honesty." There was a pause this time, longer than usual. Then, "I was hoping you'd say that." She chose a private rooftop lounge, high above the city, open air, quiet enough for truth but public enough to keep emotions from spiraling. It felt symbolic. No walls, no hiding. At 8 sharp, Madison arrived alone. The city stretched beneath her like a living thing, lights flickering, traffic humming. She stood near the railing, hands resting lightly on the cool metal, breathing in the night. Enzo arrived first. He walked toward her without hurry, dressed simply, power stripped down to presence. When he stopped beside her, he didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He waited. Madison appreciated that more than he knew. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I always will," Enzo replied. She nodded, then looked back out at the city. "I asked Adrian too." Enzo's jaw tightened just enough to be noticeable. "I know." She glanced at him. "Are you angry?" "No," he said honestly. "But I'm alert." That made her smile faintly. Adrian arrived minutes later, stepping onto the rooftop with his usual ease. But Madison noticed the restraint in his movements. He wasn't joking tonight. He wasn't performing. He stopped a few feet away, eyes moving between her and Enzo. "Okay," he said. "This feels serious." "It is," Madison replied. They stood in a loose triangle, the city watching like a witness that didn't care who got hurt. Madison took a breath. "I'm not doing this to be cruel or indecisive. I'm doing this because I owe all of us the truth." Adrian nodded. "Then say it." Enzo stayed silent, gaze steady on her. Madison met Enzo's eyes first. "You make me feel safe." Enzo's expression didn't change, but something deep in his eyes shifted, like the ground settling. She turned to Adrian. "You make me feel alive." Adrian exhaled slowly, like he'd been expecting it. Madison swallowed. "I can't pretend one of those doesn't matter more than the other. But I also can't pretend they're the same." Adrian crossed his arms loosely. "So which one wins?" Madison looked back at the city. "The one I can build a future with." Enzo didn't move. "And that's—" She faced him again. "You." Adrian closed his eyes briefly, just a second. Then he opened them, the smile already back, but quieter now. "Yeah," he said softly. "I figured." Madison's chest tightened. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," Adrian replied. "If you did, you wouldn't have done this honestly." Enzo finally spoke, voice low. "Adrian?" Adrian lifted a hand. "Don't. This is between me and her." He stepped closer to Madison, stopping at a respectful distance. "I won't lie and say this doesn't sting. It does." Madison held his gaze. "You matter to me." He smiled faintly. "That's the problem." Then his tone shifted, lighter, steadier. "But I'd rather walk away with my dignity than stay and poison something real." Enzo watched him carefully. "You're sure?" Adrian glanced at his brother. "She chose you. If I fight that, I lose both of you." Silence fell, heavy, respectful. Madison felt tears sting her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them back. "I'm sorry." Adrian shook his head. "Don't apologize for choosing." He turned to Enzo. "You hurt her, and I'll hurt you." Enzo nodded once. "Fair." Adrian looked back at Madison one last time. "You deserve a man who protects you without shrinking you." Her voice broke. "Thank you." Adrian stepped back, hands in his pockets, then turned and walked toward the exit. Halfway there, he paused, glancing over his shoulder. "And Madison?" "Yes?" He smiled, real this time. "If you ever need someone to remind you how powerful you are, you already know where to find me." Then he was gone. The door closed softly behind him. Madison stood frozen, heart aching in a way that felt clean, not regretful. Enzo stepped closer, but still didn't touch her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I will be." They stood in silence, the city filling the space where Adrian had been. Finally, Madison turned to Enzo. "I chose you knowing your world is complicated." Enzo's voice was steady. "I won't pretend it isn't." She stepped closer, close enough now to feel his warmth. "I won't be protected from the truth." "You won't," he promised. "I won't be hidden." "You won't. And I won't be controlled." Enzo lifted his hand, not to claim, but to ask. He waited. Madison placed her hand in his. "I don't want safety that costs me myself," she said. Enzo's thumb brushed her knuckles gently. "You won't lose yourself with me." She searched his face. "How do you know?" Because you challenged me from the first second, he replied, and I never wanted you to stop. Her breath caught. Enzo stepped closer now, resting his forehead lightly against hers. If you walk with me, it won't be easy. Madison smiled faintly. My life never was. His lips hovered near hers, but he didn't rush. He waited. Madison closed the distance. This kiss was different from the first. Slower, deeper, chosen. When they broke apart, Madison rested her forehead against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, real. This doesn't end the danger, she murmured. No, Enzo said, but it ends the doubt. She looked up at him. What happens now? Enzo's gaze softened. Now we move forward, together. Madison took a breath, the weight of the night settling into resolve. For the first time since that club, since the first kiss, the first warning, the first pull, she felt something solid beneath her feet. Not certainty, commitment. And as the city pulsed beneath them, Madison knew the hardest part wasn't choosing. It was letting go. But she had, and that made all the difference. Madison expected the next morning to feel lighter. Instead, it felt sharper, like every sound in her apartment carried more meaning now that she'd chosen. The coffee machine, the elevator doors downstairs, the buzz of her phone. Even silence had weight. Enzo didn't text her first. He showed up. At 7:18 a.m., her doorbell rang twice, calm, controlled, unmistakable. Madison opened the door in a robe, hair still damp, and there he was. Black coat, dark eyes, and that steady presence that made her apartment feel smaller and safer at the same time. You're early, she said. Enzo looked her over once, like he was checking that she was real. You're not alone today. Madison lifted a brow. That's not a greeting. It's the plan, he replied. She leaned against the doorframe. You're going to start telling me the plan like I work for you. Enzo's mouth twitched. No. He paused, then added, slightly lower. I'm going to tell you the plan because you're with me. Madison's chest tightened. She hated how quickly warmth rose in her body when he spoke like that. She stepped aside. Come in. Enzo walked into her apartment like he belonged there. But he didn't touch anything, didn't roam, didn't claim space. He stood near the window, scanning the street below with a quiet vigilance that didn't feel dramatic. Madison watched him for a second. So, what's happening? Enzo turned. We end this. She folded her arms. And what? The people testing you, he said. Madison's stomach tightened. You said they asked questions. Enzo nodded. And now they tried something else. Her pulse jumped. What did they do? Enzo didn't soften it. Someone approached your assistant yesterday, after work. Friendly conversation, small talk, then a question about your schedule. Madison went still, anger rising fast. They talked to her? Yes. Madison's jaw tightened. Is she okay? She's fine, Enzo said. She didn't give anything important. But it confirms what we suspected. Madison inhaled slowly. Which is? Enzo's gaze held hers. They're not guessing anymore. They're gathering. Madison walked to the kitchen counter, grounding herself with movement. So what's the plan to end it? Enzo stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough that she felt him. Tonight, there's a meeting. Private, controlled. I'll be there. You won't. Madison turned sharply. Absolutely not. Enzo didn't flinch. Madison? No, she repeated, calmer but harder. I don't do you handle it, I wait at home. That's not my life. Enzo's jaw flexed. He looked like he wanted to argue, then stopped himself. He tried again, controlled. You being there changes the risk. Madison's eyes narrowed. And me not being there changes what? Your ability to keep secrets? Enzo's gaze darkened. I'm not keeping secrets. You are. Madison shot back. You're just doing it politely. Silence stretched. Then Enzo did something she didn't expect. He nodded. Okay, he said. Then you get the truth. Madison held his gaze, pulse loud in her ears. Enzo spoke quietly, like he was choosing the cleanest words he could. There's a man who wants to take what I built. He can't take it directly, so he looks for weak spots. Madison swallowed. And you think I'm a weak spot? Enzo's eyes sharpened. No. His voice dropped. I think you're a leverage point. There's a difference. Madison hated how that made sense. And this meeting is with him? She asked. Not directly, Enzo replied. With people who answer to him. Madison's hands curled against the counter. If you go alone, they'll assume I matter. Enzo didn't deny it. You do. Madison breathed out slowly. Then let them assume. Enzo watched her for a long beat. You're not coming. Madison stepped toward him. I'm not hiding. Enzo's gaze held hers, firm, protective, and frustrated all at once. This isn't hiding. This is me making sure you don't get used. Madison's voice lowered. Then don't let me get used. Enzo's jaw tightened. You're asking for a guarantee I can't give. Madison studied him. Then give me control over my choices. Enzo exhaled slowly, like he was fighting himself. Then he nodded once. Fine. Madison blinked. Fine. Enzo stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. You don't come to the meeting. But you don't stay alone either. Madison lifted a brow. Meaning? Enzo took his phone out and made one call. When the person answered, Enzo said only, Bring him. Madison's stomach tightened. Bring who? Enzo didn't answer. 30 minutes later, a knock sounded at her door. Madison opened it and froze. Adrian stood there, hands in his coat pockets, hair slightly messy like he hadn't slept. His usual grin was there, but smaller, careful. I'm not staying, Adrian said immediately, like he needed Madison to understand he wasn't here to disrupt anything. I'm just assigned. Madison stared at Enzo over Adrian's shoulder. Assigned? Enzo's face stayed calm. I trust him. And he listens. Adrian snorted. That's a strong lie. Enzo's eyes flicked to him. Do you want to argue or do you want to help? Adrian's grin faded into something more honest. I'm here. Madison's throat tightened. She hadn't seen Adrian since the rooftop. A part of her felt relief. Another part felt guilt. Another part felt an old spark she didn't want to admit existed. She stepped aside. Come in. Adrian walked in and stopped immediately, keeping distance. Hi, he said, softer than usual. Madison nodded. Hi. Enzo watched both of them. Not jealous like a teenager, alert, assessing, steady. Madison crossed her arms. So what, Adrian is babysitting me? Adrian lifted a brow. Babysitting? No. He glanced at Enzo. I'm supervising. Madison's lips twitched despite herself. Supervising what? Adrian leaned closer, voice lower, playful again. Your bad decisions. Madison sighed. I hate that you're funny. Adrian's grin widened. I've missed you too. Enzo cleared his throat once. Adrian straightened instantly. Okay, serious. Got it. Enzo's gaze stayed on Madison. I'll be back tonight. Madison's voice was firm, alive. Enzo stepped closer, stopping inches away. Always. He lifted his hand, waiting. Madison placed her hand in his. Enzo leaned in and kissed her, slow, steady, chosen. Not the reckless club kiss. Something deeper. When he pulled back, he murmured, Lock your door. Madison's eyes narrowed. Don't order me. Enzo's mouth twitched. Please lock your door. Madison exhaled. Better. Enzo left. The moment the door closed behind him, the apartment felt different. Still safe, but quieter. Adrian stood near the window, looking down at the street like Enzo had, his expression more serious than Madison had ever seen it. Madison studied him. You okay? Adrian didn't look at her. I'm fine. She waited. Adrian finally turned, his eyes steady. I'm sorry for that kiss at the club. Madison blinked, surprised. You already said. I know, he cut in gently. But I meant it then, and I mean it more now. I crossed a line. Madison nodded slowly. Thank you. Adrian's mouth twitched. Also, you chose the right brother. Madison held his gaze. Did I? Adrian didn't joke. Yes. Madison swallowed. Does it hurt? Adrian exhaled slowly. Yeah. He gave a small, honest smile. But I'd rather hurt than watch you get pulled into something half-real. Enzo doesn't do half-real. If he's in, he's in. Madison's chest tightened. So are you. Adrian's smile turned softer. That's why I had to lose. Madison looked away, blinking quickly. Adrian stepped back, giving her space. Tell me what you need today. Madison inhaled. Normal. Adrian nodded once. Then we do normal. They did. It wasn't perfectly normal. Nothing about it could be. But it was close enough to breathe. Adrian made her breakfast like he owned the kitchen, got half the ingredients wrong, and somehow still acted proud. You put salt in the coffee, Madison said, staring at the cup. Adrian sipped his. That's not salt. That's boldness. Madison laughed despite herself. It's salt. Adrian shrugged. You're welcome. Tessa called at noon, as if she could sense chaos from miles away. Madison answered with a warning tone. If you scream, I'm hanging up. Tessa whispered dramatically. Who is with you? Madison glanced at Adrian, who was sitting on the couch like he belonged there. She sighed. Adrian. There was a pause. Then Tessa said, The other one? Madison rubbed her forehead. Yes. Tessa made a sound like she was about to faint. Madison, this is not a love story. This is a crime documentary. Adrian leaned closer and stage whispered, Tell her I'm the charming one. Madison ignored him. Tessa, I'm fine. Tessa lowered her voice, suddenly serious. Are you safe? Madison's eyes flicked to Adrian's, and she saw something there. Watchfulness, loyalty, responsibility. Yes, Madison said quietly. I'm safe. Tessa exhaled. Okay, then I'm coming over tomorrow with wine and questions. Madison's lips twitched. Absolutely not. Tessa hung up anyway, which meant it was happening. The afternoon passed with an uneasy calm. Madison worked from home. Adrian stayed present without hovering, quiet, respectful, but always aware. At 9:47 p.m., Madison's phone buzzed, a message from Enzo. On my way. Her breath caught. At 10:03, a key turned in her lock. Madison stood instantly. The door opened and Enzo stepped inside. He looked exactly the same calm face, same controlled posture, but his eyes were sharper, darker. He locked the door behind him. Madison's voice tightened. What happened? Enzo glanced at Adrian first. You can go. Adrian held his gaze. Is she safe? Enzo nodded once. Yes. Adrian looked at Madison, then gave her a small, sincere smile. Good night, Madison. Madison's throat tightened. Good night. Adrian left without drama. When the door closed, Madison turned fully to Enzo. Talk. Enzo took a slow breath. It's over. Madison blinked. Over how? Enzo stepped closer. The man behind it thought you'd make me careless. He wanted me emotional. Madison's pulse hammered. And did he get what he wanted? Enzo's gaze held hers. No. He paused, then added quieter. You made me focused. Madison's chest tightened. Enzo continued. We offered him two choices. He leaves the city and disappears, or he stays and becomes an example. Madison swallowed. And he chose? He left. Enzo said simply. He'll never get close to you again. Madison's shoulders loosened slightly, relief hitting her hard and late. She exhaled. So it's done. Enzo nodded. Yes. Madison took 2 steps toward him and stopped, close enough to feel the heat of him. Then we're done with secrets too. Enzo's gaze didn't move. Yes? Madison searched his face. Are you sure you can give me a real life? Enzo didn't pretend it would be perfect. It will be a protected life. It will be watched. There will be rules. but you won't be small inside it. Madison's voice softened. And Adrian? Enzo's jaw tightened slightly, not angry, pained. He's my brother. He'll be fine. Madison held his gaze. Will he? Enzo exhaled. He'll hurt, then he'll move. Madison nodded slowly. He deserves someone who chooses him. Enzo's voice was low. He will find her. Madison's eyes stayed on Enzo. And you? You want me chosen every day? Enzo's gaze darkened with something that wasn't threat. Yes. Madison's pulse kicked. She reached for his coat, pulling him closer. Enzo's arms wrapped around her like he'd been holding back all day, and when he kissed her, it wasn't cautious anymore. It was relief. It was hunger with purpose. It was a man who had ended a war and only cared about one thing now. Madison kissed him back, fingers in his hair, breathing him in like she'd been starved. When they finally pulled apart, Madison rested her forehead against his chest. Enzo's hand slid to her cheek, gentle. You're not a weakness. Madison looked up. Prove it. Enzo's eyes narrowed slightly. How? Madison's voice was steady. Make me your equal, in your world, in mine. Enzo didn't hesitate. Done. Madison blinked. That fast? Enzo's mouth twitched. You don't waste time, remember? Madison laughed softly, surprised by it. Okay, Mr. Dramatic. Enzo kissed her once more, short, certain, then pulled something from his pocket. A ring, simple, elegant, no oversized performance, just pure intention. Madison's breath caught. Enzo. He didn't kneel. He didn't make it a show. He held it out and said, low, Move forward with me. Madison stared at the ring, then at him. Is this your way of locking me down? Enzo's gaze held hers. No. His voice softened. This is my way of giving you a place that no one can question. Madison's eyes stung. She took a slow breath. You know I'm not easy. Enzo's thumb brushed her cheek. Good. Madison let out a shaky laugh, then nodded. Yes. Enzo slipped the ring onto her finger with steady hands. Then he kissed her again, slow, deep, like he was sealing something real. And for the first time since that night in the club, Madison felt something settle fully into place. Not control, not chaos. A choice. Epilogue. 3 months later, Madison stood in a bright kitchen in a townhouse she never expected to love. Not because it was grand, because it was quiet, because it was hers too. Tessa sat at the island, already drinking wine at 11 a.m., like time was a suggestion. I just want to say, Tessa announced, that I deserve credit. Madison didn't look up from the coffee. For what? For dragging you to that club, Tessa said proudly. You were going to marry your spreadsheets. Madison rolled her eyes. I am not marrying my spreadsheets. Tessa pointed at Madison's ring. No, you're marrying a man who looks like he could scare a judge. Madison smirked. He's very polite. Tessa gasped. That's the scariest kind. From the doorway, Adrian's voice cut in, cheerful. She's right. Madison turned, smiling. Adrian walked in, carrying a box of pastries like a peace offering, dressed casually, looking lighter. He looked at Madison's ring, then at Enzo, who stepped in behind him and wrapped an arm around Madison's waist. Adrian lifted the box. I brought sugar, for the domestic life. Enzo gave him a look. You're late. Adrian shrugged. I'm always late. It's my brand. Madison laughed, leaning into Enzo. Enzo pressed a kiss to her temple, quiet and certain, like he did it 1,000 times a day. Tessa watched them with narrowed eyes. So this is real. Madison met her gaze. It's real. Tessa sighed dramatically, then raised her glass. Fine, I approve. Adrian sat down and smirked at Madison. Still not bored, huh? Madison smiled. Not even close. Enzo tightened his arm around her, steady and warm. And Madison realized something simple, something she'd never believed she could have. A life that was powerful, a love that was chosen, and a future that didn't ask her to shrink. It asked her to stand beside him, exactly as she was.